This program contains dramatic reenactments and material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised.
A hiker, alone on a high Sierra peak, gets crushed by a boulder. Infection is spreading fast through his shattered leg.
Anytime I moved the leg, there was going to be pus or blood coming out.
With no food, he must make a risky decision.
I was concerned that the leg was in such bad shape that I was going to need to move.
And the only way he could was to crawl.
I was at that point where I'm going to have to rescue myself.
It's a mission he cannot fail. Since finishing up his last semester at college, Greg Hine had been looking forward to a 4th of July weekend hike in Kings Canyon National Park in the Sierras of California.
I always loved being in the outdoors. Hiking was always the thing that I loved more than anything else. I've spent the better part of my adult life in the outdoor industry, raft guiding, cave guiding, and just hiking and climbing.
He planned a 4-day hike that included reaching the summit of Mount Goddard.
I studied the route, but having never been out there, it was sight unseen and just a super easy walk up to Goddard for the most part.
Greg reached the summit on Saturday.
Then it was just a decision on where to come down. And that's the sticking point for me on the plan, was which way I wanted to go.
Greg had misplaced his map on the way up, so he was winging it as to which direction to descend. Then, as he cautiously made his way down, a huge rock pulled loose from above and crushed Greg's leg as it careened past.
I never saw the rock again, but I was on my butt sliding down the mountain. I had my backpack on, so it was kind of keeping me upright.
When he was able to stop sliding, Greg knew he was in bad shape. In medical terms, his leg had a compound fracture. Both his tibia and fibula bones were broken.
The condition of my leg was enough to scare me, and it hurt like hell.
Greg had taken wilderness first aid, so he knew how to splint his leg. He also had to slow down the bleeding. The loss of blood could lead to loss of consciousness and hypothermia. And then he would be in real trouble. But he didn't count on what happened overnight.
I realized that anytime I moved the leg, there was going to be trauma to the wound. There was going to be some pus or blood mixture coming out. And I luckily had a snow patch next to me, about 15, 20 feet away.
Greg realized all he had to clean his wound with was snow. He hoped the cold would help cauterize it a little, and as it melted, wash out some of the bloody pus. But the snow patch was probably 15 to 20 feet away. His leg was throbbing, and he couldn't walk. The only way to get there would be to crawl, if he could manage it. A 5-minute crawl felt like an eternity. Greg brushed off the top of the snow to get to a clean layer. He used ice crystals to scour the wound. He told Craig this was an important moment in his survival effort. This patch of snow also became Greg's source of hydration.
I did not have any food or water. I utilized the snow patch to put snow in the hood of my poncho. I would use the sun to melt the snow for water.
During the day, he'd crawl away from the cold, wet snow to stay warm in the sun. Then he'd crawl back to clean his infected leg. But besides tending his wound, he tried to move as little as possible to conserve his energy. He stared out at the view and knew he was far away from any rescue. Periodically, he blew his whistle, trying to attract attention. 3 short blasts. The universal distress signal. A desperate call for help. His brain also did him another favor.
I wasn't hungry at all. I can barely go 6 hours without eating and having hunger pains, and never had one hunger pain.
He did his best to conserve his energy and waited out his rescue. He assumed his dad would report him missing sooner than later.
Hey, Greg.
When Monday rolled around, it wasn't so much concern as it was upset. He wasn't home when he said he was going to be home.
Greg?
And that made me a little angry. So I gave him Monday night and Tuesday as a grace period. I didn't think that anything was wrong. It was just that he was taking extra time.
The accident happened Saturday. It was now Tuesday, but Greg still felt like he was doing the right thing.
The reason why I stayed put was that I know that if you get lost or injured in the mountains, you don't start walking off and making it harder for people to try to find you. So I was thinking, well, it'd be easy. I just hole up here, until someone finds me.
Then, a potentially deadly turn for the worse.
Woke up in the middle of the night, kind of in agony. I couldn't flex my ankle, and so I was concerned that the leg was atrophying or the muscles or the tendons were in such bad shape that I was going to need to move. Not being a patient person and then the leg freezing on me, I was now at that point where I'm going to have to rescue myself.
Greg decided to try to crawl down to Davis Lake in the morning, where he believed he would have a better chance of being spotted. Without his missing map, he wasn't exactly sure which direction to head. Since he would have to crawl every inch, he was going to need some guts and luck to get there. 4 days after his accident, Greg Hine decided to try to crawl to a location where he believed he would be easier to find. With his broken leg pulled up in his makeshift system of ties, Greg used his free arms and good leg to very slowly make his way down the slope.
If I was a little too jerky, scooting down the boulder field that I was coming down, or got going too fast and stopped, the shift of my hips and the bones let me know, and so that was painful.
As he came into a grassy area, he smelled the familiar scents.
Along the way, I happened to find some moths and some crickets. I had always heard about people eating them and was thinking, well, I might as well just try them out while I'm here. So I just took off the back legs and the wings, knowing that those are the things you need to do so it doesn't get stuck in your throat. And I just ate it.
Bugs are a good source of protein, but they weren't going to make up for Greg's lack of food for days. It took Greg several hours to crawl 1.6 miles to the source of Lake Davis. Exhausted from his crawl, he lay down to nap. His dad, mistakenly thinking he had to wait 2 days before reporting a missing person, when there is no waiting period, only called the sheriff that Wednesday afternoon.
Yes, I need to report a missing person.
Got a phone call maybe an hour or so later from a sheriff sergeant.
Oh, he was pretty jovial. I mean, he was excited about going hiking.
Asking just a litany of questions.
Well, no, I mean,
Most of the questions, at least initially, were very subtly framed around Greg's state of mind when he left.
I mean, he's always pretty happy.
How did he say goodbye?
He said, we'll see you later.
Did it sound like a final goodbye? I quickly caught on that what they were wanting to find out at that point was, did he go up there to end his life?
Okay, thanks so much for your help. I appreciate it.
My supervisor notified me that I needed to call Fresno County Sheriff Department because they were taking an initial report of a person who was overdue, and their itinerary took them into Kings Canyon National Park.
Looks like I found the vehicle. No backpack in the back seat.
After speaking with Fresno County deputies,
Heading back in.
I learned that the vehicle was still at the trailhead of Florence Lake.
Hello, this is Doug.
Melanie Lloyd from the Park Service called Wednesday afternoon, probably about 4 o'clock,
Yes, he was carrying a Leatherman.
asking what kind of gear Greg had taken with him,
Trekking poles.
shoe pattern, whether he was armed with a knife or gun,
He had enough food for the weekend because...
how much food he had taken with him, how much water he had taken with him.
Okay, I sure appreciate your help.
Again, very, very thorough. As Wednesday night rolled around, I didn't want to get melancholy and think, well, I might possibly lose my son. I had utmost confidence in him, but every once in a while some thoughts would sneak in that maybe he was hurt.
While Greg's dad was having his own distressing thoughts, Greg was having his most unsettling night since the accident.
You knew your sister's birthday was happening. What was going through your mind at that time?
She's had some pretty traumatic experiences on her birthday, and last thing I wanted was her brother, that she's grown up with, to have died, on or near her birthday. And that was the only part I did cry. That was the lowest point that I had, and I was like, oh no, not Sis's birthday. I want to survive because I want to not die on my sister's birthday, but also, I want to see loved ones and friends. And it sounds funny, but life's more beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, you appreciate everything more, and to love and to be loved it means more to you.
Right.
Newly motivated, Greg made a bed for himself of dried grasses. Keeping busy kept the sad thoughts out of his head as he faced another day. Thursday morning, 9 rescue teams were inserted into the field by helicopter.
What our intention was to search certain trails that we suspected would be the most likely route that Greg Hine would have taken, and also to set up trail blocks at certain trail junctions.
After we'd found Greg's signature in the Summit book, that enabled us to focus on those areas north of Mount Goddard. And one of those areas happened to be the basin around Davis Lake.
So on Thursday, I ended up waking up and being pretty exhausted from the crawl down. My forearms felt pretty shot, and I was trying to plan out the day. I was like, well, maybe I should just hold on here, recover my strength, and then Friday move. And so I was just kind of being lazy that morning. Then mid-morning, I started hearing the chopper. As soon as I heard the park's chopper, it was just, how do I get noticed or recognized? At that point, I was like, oh, shoot, I should do something. So I tried to head to this rock so that I could wave this bivy sack around. I was in this limbo of trying to get a rock in my bivy sack to twirl it around to be noticed, to throw it up in the air. It happened too fast and I couldn't get there soon enough. At that point, that was the first time I stood. That was pretty traumatic for the wound and painful for my leg.
search and rescue helicopter had come within 100 yards of Greg, but then peeled off not having seen him. Craig couldn't imagine being in that situation. Greg didn't nap for long. He could hear helicopters throughout the day, and he would try to stand to draw their attention.
I got within 200 feet of one helicopter. There was a second helicopter that came in the afternoon, and from what I found out, they were just dropping search crews off, populating the potential search areas where I might be.
Right here.
Finally, after 6 days, stranded, starving, and suffering, Greg was spotted.
We're search and rescue. I'm Ryan.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
Mr. Hine was located as the final search team was being inserted into Davis Lake.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna check your pulse real quick.
I'm gonna call it in. Okay.
Am I alive?
You're alive.
I was excited to talk to someone, to be the first person I'd talked to in 6 or 7 days.
They found him
Yeah, okay, I got you guys.
relatively in good health, considering the 5 days that he had spent
2, 3.
in the wilderness with a broken leg.
They've dropped 2 search and rescue teams in on the side of Goddard. Grid search.
So we drove up. We're talking to the sheriff's sergeant up there.
Hey, but it's a big mountain.
They're gonna be there last
One
night.
of the Park Service people said, we found him. Wonderful words to hear. I started to get excited, and I thought, well, wait a second, they didn't say what condition he was in.
Finish the sentence. Is he still living?
Just a minute, let me check.
So he was back on the radio,
Okay,
came back and said he's alive,
He's breathing. He's coherent. He's talking.
but he has a broken leg. Music to our ears. We saw Greg about 12:30. We told him how much we loved him. He said, I love you guys too.